future. But our present deficits, I think, are caused by the global banking crises, plural, and the wars in the Middle East. The solution is the rule of law, applying the rule of law to these banking crises. Senate investigators this last week talked about the London whale losing $6 billion for our biggest bank, and they can't subpoena him. Everybody at J.P. Morgan Chase is throwing him under the bus. We can't subpoena him because it's outside the jurisdiction of the Senate. What do you think about the chances for the rule of law getting us into some of these global regulations?
Getting us into global regulations, we have to be very. We don't have the authority as a country to regulate other countries or banking in other countries. We have the authority to regulate what banks in our country can do. First of all. Second of all, the only body that has some sort of transnational ability is the UN, but I'd be very careful to let the UN regulate anything. Just to
Basel Accord.
Basel III? Well, Basel III is a bunch of Swiss bankers that came up with some more rules and regulations to lay on top of Dodd-Frank, which I call Dodd-Frankenstein, because it's about...
We still need the rule of law.
I'm sorry?
We still need the rule of law to corral these must.
Absolutely, and too big to fail is exactly the thing we ought to be attacking. One thing the president said he was going to do is attack too big to fail with Dodd-Frank. The big banks have gotten actually bigger, and the small banks are going out of business, which is the wrong direction for our country to be going.
When you attack too big to fail is the same way you eat an elephant.
One bite at a
time. You start with the CEO, Robert Rubin, ought to be first in line.
Well, they did a pretty good job with Jamie Dimon last week.
They sure did.
I mean, that was a, I don't want to use a bad word, but that was a kicking. I mean, they got his attention pretty well. But you're right. You're absolutely right. One bite at a time, and you can swallow an elephant.
Start with the CEOs.
Yeah, start at the top, or whatever start at the bottom. Yes, sir.
You on me?
Yes.
Johnny, I'd like to ask you about, this is kind of changing the train of the conversation so far. Benghazi. It's been investigated and investigated, and it's way out there in the wind somewhere. Seems like we're getting nowhere with results. Seems to me it took 4 months to get the Secretary of State to testify. Nobody can touch any of the employees of the State Department. They can't get them before a congressional committee. What's your thinking on where that's going? Is it all dead?
Well, it's a good question. It's going to be my last answer because it's going to be a long one. But you asked me about something I actually know something about, which most politicians don't admit that they think they tell me they know. I was on the Foreign Relations Committee up until the end of last year, so I was on it during the Benghazi attack. I was really the first person to go on national television calling on the State Department to fess up what they knew when they knew it. I knew Craig Stevens. He was a great diplomat of the United States of America. His death was a tragedy. But what was more tragic is we had 4 Americans who were brutally murdered in the compound of the consulate in Benghazi. And we have Americans in 176 countries around the world, many of them just as dangerous as Benghazi. And for them to see their country not prepared to defend them, evacuate them, and protect them is a tragedy beyond any possible belief. I have read all of the emails between the consulate in Benghazi and the State Department. I watched the video 2.5 hours long twice. The closed-circuit cameras in the compound and at the CIA headquarters. It is unequivocally clear, without any equivocation whatsoever, that we were not ready to defend it, that it was not a mob that had watched a Muslim trailer and got mad. It was a mob, it was an organized mob that was designed for one purpose, and that was to kill Americans and then go to the CIA headquarters and get a hold of our most secret documents, which they always did, by the way. To Hillary Clinton's credit, in the first, she did not testify publicly until 4 months later, you're right. But she did come before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, a private hearing, 10 days after the Benghazi attack, and took responsibility for what happened in that meeting. So, I mean, Obama would not do it. In fact, Obama has hidden in the bushes on this one and has tried to stay away from it. John Kerry, I think, is going to make the reform changes necessary to see to it we have a better response in the future, and we never let somebody fall through the cracks like those people did in Benghazi. And we learned a lesson. But I've seen the videos, I've read the emails. I've got a top secret clearance that allowed me to do that. And I think this John Kerry as our Secretary of State, who I think was a good choice, by the way. We'll see to it never happens again. The problem is it shouldn't have ever happened the first time. That's the tragedy. I want to thank you for having me. Thank you for feeding me a great meal. Thank you for being part of a great community. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to have the job that I do, because I owe my job to each of you. You vote, you work. I'm the only Isakson in the phone book in the United States Senate that's in Atlanta. My wife hates it when I tell people this, but if you've got a problem, you call us. We're here to help you. God bless all of you, and thank you very much.